Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Mondays Down South. It's good to be back. I missed the last podcast here. I was up in DC for work, and between all the travel recently, we brought on another guest, Joe, who just was off the plane. He was over in Europe, actually saw the Jets overseas. We're going to talk about that, but welcoming Joe back, an honorary guest. He came on one time last year. Actually, it was from the same location. Joe and I were up at his Bradham apartment. So and we're just talking still about how the Jets were underperforming, and here we are again 2-3 years later, and nothing's changed. But before we get kicked off here, Joe, any initial statements for the squad, for anybody that's going to be watching this? Like, how have you been doing, man?
No, I've been good. You can't really complain when you get a couple trips across the pond in the same year. One of them, showing up with everything, all excitement. Looking to give the Vikings a good old loss. We're now 1 week removed, but still hoping we could give it to them. But, Jets do what they do, and we keep up with the same trend. So, it's you live and you learn, and I haven't learned quite yet, but I'm glad to be back.
Can't even imagine what it must be like watching abroad. Like I said to these guys, I was like, I would love to do that at some point with MDS too, because the experience is probably so unique. And what I recognize is, like, I went on a trip recently abroad as well, and I was walking around Croatia, and I had like guys like around me in like jerseys of like their teams. In my mind, I was like, oh, they must just be like American people. Like one of them had a Falcons jersey on, and someone else had something else on. And I was like, I have to ask them. Like, I was curious. I was like, oh, are you guys from like Georgia or whatever? No, he's like, no, man, I'm from London. And the other guy's like, yeah, I'm from London too. He's like, we just live in different parts of London, and we just pick the team.
It's a great experience too. You show up, and the majority of the people are all from England, right? They come, they have easy access to the tickets a little bit before we do, so they flood the stadium. And the few people that get to see somebody from, years and years ago. So like the Vikings have played there a couple of times. Jacksonville plays there like twice a year. I think this year they play every year. So they've got a large following. So you get a lot of, the locals, and they cheer like it's a true football match, right? Where they're standing up the entire time, going crazy. The best thing I think that I saw, you see, like you said, you see jerseys from all over the place. The best thing I saw was a group of guys standing there with beers at their feet as they were picking them up, in between crossing off different items on their bingo card with different logos for all the jerseys they'd seen. So as everyone's flooding into the stadium, they're over there crossing off, hey, I got Jacksonville. Oh man, I got Las Vegas. So it was really cool to see that.
Did you see any crazy jerseys at all? Like hopefully no like Baltimore Ravens Ray Rice jerseys or anything like that. But do you see anything just wild?
To be honest, I didn't see any Jets Darnold jerseys, which I was really surprised at. I thought that was going to be the easiest one to see, but no. I mean, it's just been regular everyday people. Lots of Travis Kelce's. Lots of Patrick Mahomes, just because they're kind of a global brand at this point. So, it was awesome. So
that's awesome, man. I think, I think we've kind of teed it up in the past, but Joe is certainly a big Gang Green guy, New York Jets, and he mentioned that with the travels, and I know we'll dive into that more. But it's a good segue because you were talking about, just going out to go watch them, and this week we wanted to start the pod off with a conversation about trades, right? And I want to start with first the trades that have already happened, some of the bigger ones, and then maybe some of the things we predict or we think would be good trades, whether it happens or not. So I think that's kind of the perfect segue to what do you think of the Devontae Adams trade? As the guest, you can lead us off. Like, it's the first one we want to focus on. A lot of wide receivers getting traded. Devontae, I think, being the most significant one, going back to his old buddy Aaron Rodgers and across from Garrett Wilson. Got quite the offense over there paired with Breece Hall. So I want to get your thoughts on that, Joe.
Yeah, so the biggest thing for me, right, and you're hitting on it already, which is just lots of wide receivers down this year. And so, what you got to do is you got to pick up some people from the other side. So, everybody's going to be a buyer seller here. So the Jets were buying on Devontae Adams, trying to bring him in, hoping that the chemistry's there with not only Aaron Rodgers but also Nick Hackett, right? The best thing that he did on the field was save a touchdown last week, but that was kind of the big things that we're hoping that he can bring to the team. Garrett Wilson now is getting a little bit more space, so it's no secret that when you bring two guys that are out there that can get open, it really stretches the opponent in order to try to cover some of those and who you're going to double, who you're going to drop into a zone. So really trying to figure that out, and I'm hoping that it opens it up for them once they get a little more time to get back in sync and rhythm moving forward. So.
Are you happy with the compensation? Like, what? It's a third that could be a potential second if he's an All Pro, or if you guys make it to the NFC Championship / Super Bowl, plus the full contract. I think is the correct deal, right? So I think curious to see what you thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, what you're doing here is you're selling out for the season, right? They're trading out the draft picks, paying the extra cap space. This is what we're doing is you're selling, and the hope is they don't have the easiest of schedules moving forward. And so, you get a couple quick wins with maybe the Patriots coming up this week. But things like Tua coming back, and if he can stay healthy, playing like Miami twice late in the year isn't something that I really want to do, especially with the way our defenses have been playing. And so those are the big things that are really kind of leaping out to me. That we've got some stuff to solve, but if he can come in and be the catalyst that can get us to the next level and really open up that offense, we can see some of like the shades of Green Bay past almost here in New York. That would be pretty cool.
I agree. That's awesome. Zach, have any thoughts on this one?
Well, I'll let you go first, and I'll give mine because it is kind of in relation to the Raiders there.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add. Obviously, we know what Devontae and Aaron can do together. I do think it's a good mention as to what it does for Garrett Wilson. I think it actually helps him out a lot. He's the one main guy on the offense I kind of want to call out a little bit. Like that drop on Sunday basically cost them the game. I mean, maybe they wouldn't have won anyway, but
it wasn't a drop. It was a muffed drop to an interception for almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So he just needs to be way more consistent, which I think is one of the reasons they wanted to bring in Devontae, but hopefully that helps him. So I'm just been laughing at all the Devontae living at Aaron's house, and like he's in the background on the Pat McAfee show. And
so piggybacking off of what Joe had mentioned with the Devontae Adams trade from Las Vegas to New York, I'm actually going to pick on the Las Vegas Raiders and teed up for something I read online that I actually think would be crazy and is not completely out of the realm of possibility. And that is that the Raiders are shopping their players. They're doing a complete rebuild, and they need more than just a third-round conditional second-round pick, right, in the draft. They need a couple of first-round picks. How do they do that? They trade Max Crosby to the Detroit Lions, who are super Super Bowl hungry, and because of the loss of Aiden Hutchinson for a full year, they're going to need that pass rush that they committed to in years past when they drafted Aiden Hutchinson in the first place. So I think that Max Crosby brings that dog mentality, would fit completely well into the Dan Campbell system.
I think he's from Detroit, right? He grew up a Lions fan, and I think would obviously love to go back. My issue with this one, I think, is the contract situation. I totally think they should be targeting someone to replace Hutchinson, but I believe Crosby's under contract for another 2 years at a pretty expensive cap hit. So I don't know if they would want to devote. I don't know what Aiden's contract is. I guess he's still maybe on his rookie deal or his early rookie extension, but so maybe the cap can work having two of the best defensive ends in football, really. But that would be my one question: is if they want to devote a $25 million cap hit just to replace Aiden for this year, or maybe they can work beyond this year. So, but I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I don't know what their contract situation is, but the flip side also is I don't know. Max is a good example of their number one need, maybe their only need, is getting a pass rusher to replace Aiden, because I don't see another weakness in that entire team. Their secondary looks good. Branch looks awesome. You have a litany of offensive weapons. Goff's playing well. Like the line is good. Like there's really nothing. You obviously have two of the best running backs. Like I could go all day about how good Detroit is in terms of personnel. I think that's the one need they have. In the days of like, if this is going to put them over the top, they just got to go for it because they've been taking, decades to build a franchise that has the potential to compete. Finally won a playoff game last year, got to an NFC championship. Now's the time. Like the NFC is as wide open as it's going to be. San Francisco just lost Ayuk probably for the season, which is a bummer. You have Debo, who's, he's got pneumonia. Hopefully he'll be back soon. But, outside of, I don't know, maybe right now the Packers, and we'll probably get into this more, I don't see anyone in the NFC that's like a real threat to him and as currently constructed with, the Buccaneers getting injured and such. So if I'm the Lions, I'm full sending it. Like if it means you have to, sacrifice a little bit later on, then that's fine. But if it means you win a Super Bowl this year or next year, like, or maybe even both, like you got to do it. So I'm 100% with Zach. I think he's obviously like the number one guy for them to get. If they can make it work with their cap space, do what you got to do. And I don't think if they have to give up a first or a second to do it, and it's going to give you a chance to truly win, like just do it. Like there's no more, like they're not in a position to wait anymore.
Yeah, and I would just say on that, Evan, you mentioned like the Avengers are together in San Francisco before the season started, and what you were hinting at when you said that is they have so many players that they have on cap that are super expensive that how are they going to figure out how to pay Brock Purdy? And that's going to be a huge issue for them this year, but it is a result of them being very structurally like sound with their contracts year over year. I'm not saying that they underpaid for guys. Like they found themselves in the cap hell. You don't just like naturally stumble upon it, right? But look at the amount of Super Bowl appearances that they've gone to. So it really makes it seem like the effort was worth it, even though they didn't come away with a victory, right? The Chiefs are their main nemesis and probably always will be. Andy Reid will live rent-free in their heads. But the reason I bring this up is because the reason you draft super well and you really lean on your cap is for these type of decisions. I'm not saying it's the best decision, but they are very well equipped to go after him and really try to win this Super Bowl, which, hey, at the end of the day, if it puts them in cap hell, but they got that victory, then that's all that matters. So I'm not sure if Joe has any thoughts, but that was a good one. The Crosby one would be a crazy blockbuster trade.
No, I think it's quite, the one thing that I would add to it is as a fan, if I'm a fan of the Detroit Lions, right, I would sell a couple years of, good picks and maybe the opportunity for, a continually good team for the opportunity to go in there and win, right? They were right on the cusp of it last year. Mm-hmm. If this is what gets them over that hump, right, that seems like, good enough in my book.
I agree.
That's the time to do it. That's a good point. Like you guys mentioned, now's the time. The Niners don't look like they're going to be the same team. And, we'll see what it looks like by the end of the year. But you got to think the Lions are the favorites right now, even without them.
And I'm sure we'll deep dive a little bit more into kind of at least a little bit of the matchups after this. But to piggyback off those, let's finish up on some of these trades really quickly that have happened. Just quick hitters. Amari Cooper to the Bills for a team that clearly very much needed a number one wide receiver. My biggest takeaway with that was Keon Coleman looked way better once he got a number one wide receiver across from him, almost similar to the Wilson situation, except even more amplified because he's young. So I think that opens up the offense in a really big way. And, of course, this gives more running routes to James Cook. I think Cooper will figure it out. I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on how much you think this elevates the Bills' ceiling this year with them, in a good position right now in their division. What do you guys think of that?
I think the Amari Cooper trade was huge, but what's even more than that is he's actually better when he doesn't know the route he's supposed to run, because I'm not sure if you guys saw, Keon Coleman was pointing out like, hey, no, run a seam route. Like, don't run towards my direction. Next thing you know, Josh Allen just blisters it in there for like a 20-yard touchdown. So I thought that was actually pretty funny, but it does go to show you when you get like that veteran presence and you mix that with a very talented rookie wide receiver, good things are bound to happen. So I feel like there could be a lot of promise with the Jets there. But and staying with the Bills, love the trade side, but I'm curious to see what Evan thinks about it.
Yeah, I think they needed someone on the outside. Is it a huge needle mover for me? I'm not sure. The issue with them is Cooper was really the only option because of he has a weird contract where he's like, it's only like $1 million and the Bills have like no cap space. So my question is, I don't see a ton of Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman like on the field together like all the time, because obviously you're going to have Shakir on the field. They're going to run a ton of 2 tight ends. So you'll see them, on the field together a decent amount, but not like the entire time. And is Amari Cooper even that much better than Keon Coleman right now? Amari Cooper has been one of the worst receivers in the NFL this year. He did look, even in one game so far, a lot better. So it was probably just I don't want to play with Deshaun Watson and on the Browns situation anymore. And assuming that is the case, I think it'll be a big upgrade. But, based on what we've seen this year, even as a rookie, Keon Coleman looks potentially even better right now than Amari Cooper. So we'll see. I don't think it moves the needle a whole lot for me, but I think it was the right move to make for sure.
I would agree with you that I don't think it moves the needle a ton in the context of their AFC standing, but I definitively think that Amari Cooper is a better wide receiver than Keon Coleman at this stage of their career. Maybe one day Keon will be better. I can't speak to that. But I think it's totally unfair to say to Amari he's looked bad this year when he's played on arguably the worst, if not one of, like maybe next to the Panthers, the worst offense in football all season. And we're talking about Amari Cooper last year when he got Joe Flacco's 40-year-old self throwing him the football, looking like he was, back in Dallas again. Like Amari still has some juice left. I'm not saying he's going to go be prime Raiders Amari, but I do think it opens up their offense a lot more. I think it's a little unfair to him, given his circumstances to say that, because I do believe that he's better than Coleman for sure.
Unfair to him, dude. He's dropped more balls than any other wide receiver in the past 5 years.
Sure, but he's also a big-bodied wide receiver who catches touchdowns and is definitively like a above average good wide receiver. You're lying to me if you don't believe that. I know that.
He catches the ball.
So I'm referencing PFF's data on, I think it was the separation scores that literally had him as the worst wide receiver in the NFL at separating, which is unbelievable. Now, I do agree with you, Sai, that I think that's more, that either says he's washed or he's not trying. I think it's probably more the latter there in the Browns, but we'll see.
It's funny how much better guys like PFF statistics look when they go to a team they're happy on or play with a good quarterback. Like, whoa! This reminds me of when Blake Griffin goes to the Nets after being in Detroit, and then his first game on the Nets he dunks, and then they're like, "Wait, you can still dunk?" Because he decided for like 3 years he's just not going to try because he's on the Detroit Pistons and they weren't giving him any effort. This is one of those situations. It's hilarious.
No, that's because he broke up with a Kardashian side. Mm-hmm.
That could be it too. You might be right.
Anyways, Joe, what are your thoughts on Amari? And we can move on.
So, the biggest thing for me is, so these guys that come in and been in the league for years and years and years, it's just like, it's another opportunity for them to get some reps and get a little bit better quarterback throwing the ball. I just love that they step in and they play like it's me picking up at the YMCA. They just run right in. I know how to run it. Hey, give me the call signs, and we'll run out there and go and play. So you just love to see it, and I'm really happy for him that he's got somebody out there that'll get him the ball, and good on him.
It seems like the whole AFC is ripping each other off too, because like you mentioned, with the veteran presence and teams that want to compete this year, then you go to the Chiefs this morning and we wake up to news that DeAndre Hopkins has been acquired by the Chiefs. So you just watch 3 like mid 30-year-old wide receivers get traded to competing teams or teams that want to compete this year. So there's another one for y'all. DeAndre is an interesting situation because it's hard to tell where he is at this stage of his career. Like, is he still have some juice left? Is he a little bit more washed, and they made the trade because he was the only one they could get for the price they wanted? They gave up a 4th-round pick for him. What do you guys think this does for a Chiefs offense that admittedly has been not as good as maybe years past, or has looked a little bit more like they did towards the end of last regular season because of all the wide receiver injuries they've had, and with all the guys they have out? What are you guys' thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think they needed to do something like this. Like, I think people overestimated what Xavier Worthy would be able to do in year one. I always thought he was just going to be a guy that's going to run straight and, have some gadgetry. And it looks like that's exactly going to be the case. So without Rashee Rice and Hollywood, like, they needed an outside wide receiver that can, be a high volume receiver to go with Kelsey in the run game. So I think it's something they had to do. They didn't have a ton of options in terms of who they could get. I know they tried for Cooper Kupp, which would have been something to see him play with Patrick Mahomes, but, it wasn't very realistic. So, I think he'll play really well there.
Yeah, I think they need a possession receiver, and I think they need to get somebody without completely crushing their cap. But in terms of DeAndre Hopkins beating anybody in a 40-yard dash, I mean, I'm probably the only one he could beat at this point. All right, so he's up there in his career. Don't really expect him to outpace people, but I actually do think he's a perfect complement to Xavier Worthy. and also, taking attention off of Xavier Worthy that, because he's a rookie and you can only do so much as a rook. So, but maybe I'll kick it over to your way, Cy. Like you've mentioned a couple of trades that have already occurred. What are some trades that you think are bound to happen before Tuesday?
I don't know about bound to happen, but Joe, maybe I'll have you comment on something that Evan sent us in our group message, because I actually think this would be a genius trade for both of these teams if they do it. Evan sent a message yesterday. You may have seen this show about Matt Stafford and Sam Darnold being involved in a trade package for each other, where the Vikings get Matt Stafford in a win now window with JJ McCarthy coming back next year. So he's kind of like the perfect like bridge gap, but also raises your ceiling. Because, a lot of people, I think if they went and got Matt Stafford right now with just Jay Jetta there and Addison on that whole offense, a lot of people would probably pick them to be the, right there with the Lions as the favorites in the NFC after a very close game they just had with them. And then the flip side of that is you get Darnold going to a Rams team with McVay, who has looked pretty good this year. And then assuming they trade Cooper Kupp, you try to build around him and Puka Nacua for future years. I'm assuming they'd have to give a little bit more than Darnold, probably a pick attached to that to get Stafford, because veteran quarterbacks are not, you don't get easy. But what do you think of that, Joe? Do you think there's some utility in that?
So I know that I mentioned that it's easy to kind of slot in and slot out wide receivers, right, when they're jumping from team to team. I think the quarterback's a whole different position, right? You're reading defenses, you're dealing with a whole new offensive line, you're dealing with a whole new set of wide receivers where you don't have the timing that you haven't been building up for training camp all throughout the year. So the biggest thing for me would be what is going to be the immediate impact of coming in and having 2 weeks of figuring out how we're going to get these guys on the same page. I think, Matt Stafford is the better player at this point in his career. I think Sam Darnold's a really solid backup and a guy that you can throw in at any time that can, won't really go above and beyond to take over a game and win it for you, but won't also lose it for you on the other end. So he'll be right down the middle of the road. So I think that would be, a good opportunity for the Vikings. My only issue is, what is it in the short term that's going to be, potentially derail their kind of playoff hopes?
Yeah, I think Evan, Zach, I want you guys to comment on this too. The one thing I will say is that there's cushioning with them having the record that they do, right? Like maybe not to win the division, but cushioning in the context of they'd have the time to at least a few weeks to get things in order. But we have seen Stafford, admittedly he had an offseason, but we have seen him get traded and then win a Super Bowl his first year with the team because he just has that veteran mind and he's such an intelligent player and he's such a dog. So that's what makes me want to see it so badly, because him with Justin Jefferson, Justin Jefferson would break fantasy football. This man would have like 35 fantasy points a game if he had Stafford flinging the ball to him. So I just want to see that. Like, even if it doesn't work, I would just love to watch him play with them. So I don't know what you guys think, Evan and Zach. Do you guys think there's utility in it?
Zach, what you got?
I think it would be a horrible trade because it would take a couple of weeks for Stafford to get adjusted to the new playbook and everything. And I also think that Stafford is heavily overrated. So I would say they got to rock with Sam Darnold. He's the one that got them there. Aside the two names, right, or three names, Justin Jefferson, Sam Darnold, Brian Flores. That's your recipe for success. You take one of those guys out, it could really change the team dynamic. And I think there is a danger that people are unaware of if a trade like that were to go through. There's just like that, you kind of lose that team camaraderie. Although Matt Stafford is a good leader, I just feel like you're kind of swapping quarterbacks, but he's one of the reasons that you got there. So I just feel like there's danger in that.
This is so interesting to me. And the one clarification I'll make about this is that it did not say for sure that Sam Darnold was a part of it, but I'm speculating here because when we talked, I think earlier this year about Sam Darnold and how obviously he's on a 1-year deal, the Vikings have JJ McCarthy coming back. Where is he going to play next year? But also Sam Darnold's playing at such a high level. Like, you don't let, top half of the league quarterbacks just walk for nothing. So I think they would probably, if they do have him, franchise tag him and then maybe look to trade him, something like that. So that's why this is so interesting to me. But I think Joe is spot on here with this is such a big risk to think that you can just swap in and out these quarterbacks when Darnold's arguably played better this year, obviously in a way better situation. And yes, I do trust Matthew Stafford, all else equal, to win a big game for me, but you'd be taking such a huge risk in the middle of the season. I think Sai's also dead on here with like the lead they've built up in terms of making a wild card gives them a little more flexibility to work in that kind of change. And I think the biggest thing here, though, is Kevin O'Connell, I believe, was maybe McVay's OC. So there's like those offenses like are basically one and the same. So for each of those quarterbacks, it should be a pretty easy transition. And then from a Darnold perspective, I said this, where my favorite destination for him to play long-term would be to get a long-term deal with the Rams, because they had him for a very brief time, I think, when O'Connell was there, and they absolutely loved him from what I read. So I think this would be perfect in that sense. I think it's a huge risk for the Vikings, but if it gives you that incremental bump, especially as a big game performer like Stafford is, then go for it. And then I think Stafford, you probably have him next year if he wants to keep playing, and then JJ can maybe sit another year. Or, you can do what you got to do. But this is an interesting move. And who knows, maybe Cooper Kupp could be involved. Imagine that.
That's true. I think those are some good points, Evan. I think this is a great time for us to take the trades into our analysis of teams, because we watched the Vikings have a close game with the Lions and end up losing. But I do want to call Zach out, because now that we're getting into the recap situation, what I don't understand, though, is I feel like every week Zach, for the most part, has slept on the Vikings or has basically underplayed how well they're playing week after week. But then you also are now saying that trading for Matt Stafford wouldn't be a good move, because maybe it's just because you believe Stafford is overrated, but I want you to tell me more about that. I'm surprised to hear you say you think Matt Stafford is overrated. That was a bold take, especially after last year. You said the Rams aren't gonna do anything and they're overrated, and then they made the playoffs and almost beat the Lions. So I want you to defend that take. That's a crazy take to me.
My take is that Matt Stafford has had multiple surgeries before, and he's 36 years old. And I just feel like there would be an adjustment period where he gets settled and understands his receivers. Not like it would take a superior adjustment. I actually really like the dynamics of the trade. Like the way Evan broke it down, it makes a lot more sense to me. But I just think you stick Matt Stafford in, he kind of like steals the show, and Sam Darnold doesn't reap any of the rewards of him being a fantastic quarterback that has been, developed for years and years under the O'Connells and the McVays of the world. And for you to just kind of like cast him aside so that Matt Stafford, who was good like 3 or 4 years ago, like we're talking like Super Bowl worthy Matt Stafford that you're talking about, he is not that guy anymore.
He just made the playoffs last year against teams that were definitively better than his own by being a veteran quarterback and being able to read defenses. Yeah. It's what we talked about a week ago. I think Zach wasn't on the show, Joe, but this was kind of a fun conversation. I brought up to Evan, in this modern era of football, we're watching, so many teams be schematically dependent offensively, right? Like there's so many teams nowadays where the quarterback play and the success of an offense is dependent on how you call your plays and the creativity of your offense. Whereas the old school era that we grew up on when we were kids was the Mannings, Brady's, Breeze, Rodgers of the world, going up to the line and being able to audible and call plays. That's why I think there is a bit of a place for guys like Stafford, because you watched Joe Flacco last year come in with the Browns, who he didn't play all year, and then there's an injury, he comes in, and he's throwing for like 300 yards a game and multiple touchdowns. I'm not saying you're going to go win a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, but what I am saying is if a guy like him can come in, there's a place for guys with intelligence who are able to go up to the line, audible, be able to say, hey, I see JJ has got a one-on-one matchup. Like, let me put him on a slant route and get him wide open in space. Like the kinds of stuff we watched growing up. That's what I think Stafford brings to a team that very few other people do. And for a guy who's older, he's very durable. We're talking about a guy who's had more starts than pretty much everyone in the NFL and fights through injuries because he's a dog. I just think the ceiling you get out of acquiring a veteran quarterback, if you're a team that's ready to win now, you go for the Super Bowl, man. Like you go try to get it, because next year I want it to be JJ's team. I want McCarthy to get his run. You didn't draft him in the first round just to sit him forever, right? So I kind of think it's the perfect situation. But
all right, so this is a great point. I actually want to put Joe on the spot here. Joe, if you were the GM for the Minnesota Vikings and you had the option to push the big red button and say, we're going to make this trade and it's going to be a little bit of a player swap, just those two, and like the draft picks, they just somehow work itself out, right? It's a very like compromisable trade. Do you actually press the red button to make sure it happens?
Right. The information you have now is they're both healthy. They're both moving on. they both can play, right? I think Matt Stafford is marginally better. I think, we're looking at the schedule. You have, Rams this week, Colts, and then Jaguars and Titans. So that's a pretty easy schedule for the Vikings for him to come in and just be able to get through those. I think at the end of the day, I'm sticking with Sam Darnold. I'm sticking with the guy that got us here. I'm sticking with the team chemistry rather than trying to blow up the locker room and try to do that. One thing I will add to that, though, is, I'd love to see a little kind of baseball style trade where, you call them in from the outfield and, you just have to play 2 back-to-back series because they're playing this Thursday night. You just grab Stafford, pop the jersey off, get a new helmet, and go right in on the other team. That would be something pretty funny to see.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. I think that's a great segue though, because this weekend was definitely a fun one. Couple quick hitters. I'm curious to see. I made the mistake, Joe. I don't know if you know this. I don't know how much you tune into the week to week, but I am the biggest Chiefs truther there is out there. I'm not a fan of the Chiefs, but I'm a fan of Patrick Mahomes, and I picked them every single week without fail. That's what I did last year in the playoffs, and it won me favor, and at least amongst our podcast. The thing that I said that last week was I was like, I reserved the right 1 week in a season to pick against the Chiefs. And I said, it was going to be the team that played in the Super Bowl, the 49ers. And I am dumb because I don't know why I ever pick against the Chiefs. And I have now removed that right. I will never pick against the Chiefs again. They're playing like second string guys across the board. And I understand San Francisco got hurt, but they went in there and just straight up dominated the 49ers this weekend. And it's like, obviously it's funny. They're an undefeated team, but it feels like they have holes and they haven't lost a game. It's just such a funny paradox to me. Like, we talk about the Chiefs as needing so many things to win a Super Bowl and nobody's beaten them yet. And it's hilarious. And it's not necessarily because of the offense as much as it is the extremely amazing defense and defensive coordinating they have, but they find ways to win on offense too, and it's crazy. It's how they won a Super Bowl last year. So I want to see what you guys think about that. It was a good effort from them.
I mean, I think the Chiefs are, and Patrick Mahomes specifically is a winner, right? He goes out there and he does what he needs to do to get the job done, right? Tom Brady did it for years, with a ragtag group of people up in New England. So Patrick Mahomes is kind of doing something similar here, where he's got the group of misfits almost that are out there, and he's able to pull them together and game it. I think you're absolutely right. Right, the defense is fantastic. I know I heard earlier today, so I'll kind of paraphrase it. But the defensive coordinator, what is it, Tom Spagnuolo, is just an incredible defensive coordinator that should just never be head coach again. Right, keep him there where he's going out and he's just drafting up the plays that he needs in order to contain these offenses and keep his team in the game and give his offense a shot so that Patrick Mahomes can get out there and go win it.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah, I completely agree. And segueing off of that, I think that the Washington Commanders could say the same thing about Cliff Kingsbury. This is a guy who, when the bright lights and the film roll is not on him constantly for every decision he makes, and he's able to just coach a young offensive team and run the plays he wants in conjunction with his young quarterback and the relationship that they're developing. I think that's crazy. It's just amazing to see what Washington's done. They haven't been able to pull something off like this in a long time. And so I know Jaden's going to be out he's week to week, so they're going to be careful with how they play him and get him and rush him back. But I think what Cliff Kingsbury has done in Washington, maybe we can talk about that, Evan, has been nothing short of fantastic. So
yeah, I talked plenty about Cliff. I mean, they played the Panthers, but the fact that Mariota was able to go like 17 of 20 and whatever was impressive off the bench. So I do think Jaden's probably out this week. They're probably gonna play it safe, and then just it's a real bummer that Caleb and Jaden game might not happen. I feel like he's gonna push me on the field, but I want to be safe with this one if we have to take a loss this week. Not that I think it's a guarantee. I want him back for the easier games just to keep this run moving. But, yeah, I think Cliff's been fantastic. It's just another example of it, what he was able to do with Mariota at quarterback.
Yeah, that was such a bummer to hear that Jaden might not play this weekend, because this is outside of my own team, this is one of the games I was most looking forward to all year, especially because Caleb is starting to really pick it up over the last couple of weeks. I feel like it would have been such a fun matchup with that 1-2 draft pick situation. So it's such a bummer. But my hope is they'll see each other in the playoffs, and it'll be with more marbles on the table to fight it out. We talked about your team. Talk about Zach's over there. What a terrible effort in showing from your Falcons. And me and Evan made the mistake of picking your Falcons. And the funniest thing, Joe, is in the pick segment, Zach wasn't on the show, but he texted us and he's like, hey, I got the Seahawks this week. And we thought he was crazy. We're like, you picked the Seahawks or the Falcons? And then on Sunday, he changes his mind and decides that he's going to join us in the Falcons train. We're all like, okay, sweet. But because Zach waited till Sunday, we didn't pick the Falcons to win this weekend to include in our parlay. And we ended up hitting our parlay. It was a big win for us. So like Zach kind of saved us there, but I just want to get your thoughts. Like what happened? Like how
the Matrix works, gents. There's two things. One, Kirk Cousins is going to do Kirk Cousins things. He's going to play amazing, throw for 500 plus yards, something that Matt Ryan never did a couple weeks ago. And then he's going to turn around and he's going to throw 2 interceptions and lose a fumble on a really stupid play with him holding the ball way too long. And it was recovered for a touchdown because he thinks he can do more than he can on his Achilles. And he was already slow before the Achilles injury. So he needs to tighten up those turnovers because they will cost us, and they did throughout that entire game. And we were in the game through late into the third quarter before it got away from us. So it was like one part that. The second part is I actually think Seattle Seahawks are a really, really good team. And I regret the fact that we threw money on the San Francisco 49ers to win that division because I think that Seattle's for the taking. They're very good defensively. They're better than I thought defensively. With Witherspoon, the cornerback they got in the first round out of Illinois, he's been a stud. And then Kenneth Walker. I've said this before the season started. The dude's battling injuries. The dude was sick, had pneumonia, still went out there, played like an absolute beast. He's just as deadly in the receiving game as he is in the rushing game. And I believe Evan mentioned that Charbonnet is just as good as Kenneth Walker, and that is false.
But for my words, I just don't believe that like he's slightly worse and running back. It's it's kind of whatever for me. But
I think it's a massive difference. I think you saw it in that game, 34-14. Kenneth Walker is such a beast. So I think Seattle is back on the table, and I actually do now think that they're going to win the division.
Wow, that is with the injuries, maybe it's not that hot of a take as it would have been a week ago. But I don't know. I still think I got the 49ers. I think the Seahawks are a little too up and down for me in terms of how they play. It seems like they have boom weeks and bust weeks, and I just don't love that. I'd rather have a little bit more of a consistent team. But I put this a little bit more on the Falcons. Yeah, Kirk didn't have the greatest game, but your young guys played well. Bijan was great. Kyle Pitts and Drake London did their job. I mean, they each had over 5 receptions a pop. So obviously Kirk needs to play a little bit better. But your defense, a couple weeks ago we were talking about your defense being your strength, and it seems like recently your defense has been your weakness more than anything. Like they got picked apart. I mean, that touchdown to DK was a crazy throw, but they were just beating you guys downfield all the time. I mean, I feel like that's something you guys gotta. You have good corners, but maybe you need more of a pass rush to get home to not have to put them in bad situations like that. Yeah.
Did you see DK holding AJ Terrell? He wasn't even really holding him. He was just blocking him with one hand.
I mean,
it was the most emasculating thing I've seen in a football field in a long time.
I don't know what you do, bro. DK's so big, it's ridiculous. What did you guys think of? Well, actually, I'll throw it over to you guys in a minute. I just want to throw over one more game. I said at the beginning of the year, and for a little bit with the injuries, I was like, okay, I hope they get back to it. Bro, the Jordan Love Packers are a dynasty. I mean, I know Jordan struggled at the beginning. Whoa. No, I'm telling you right now, this team is going to be amazing for the next 5 years, if not longer. They are unbelievable. I understand Jordan's had some not so great games. I know Evans called him out on it. But right now, I am all aboard the Jordan Love train. I am not wavering. The way he spreads that football, every week some other receiver gets over 100-yard receivings and a touchdown. It's crazy the way he's able to spread that ball around. Their defense is playing better. And I want to take a second to pick on C.J. Stroud because I give this man his flowers more than most Colts fans ever probably should, but it's because I recognize how great he has been as a young player. But his last 2 weeks, he has been terrible. I mean, turnover after turnover. the moment Nico Collins went down, I get it. He lost his number one receiver. He has been a shell of who he was prior to that. Against the Bills, he almost single-handedly lost him the game at the end. And then this week, he had multiple turnovers to give the Packers the opportunity to win that game, and he got outplayed by Jordan Love. So I want to start putting a little more love on Jordan Love. No pun intended. I know Evan likes to pick on him a little bit, but I am all aboard the Packers, for a long, long time.
Can you define dynasty for me right here?
I guess what I'm saying, dynasty is a strong word. I'm getting a little excited. I won't dispute that. But I guess what I'm saying is I expect the Packers to be a perennial NFC championship, get to the Super Bowl kind of team, and I think they'll win one, sooner rather than later. I truly believe that. They're just getting started too, right? Like Love has only had his second year starting, and last year they almost beat the 49ers, the defending NFC champion, in the playoffs, his first full season starting. And this year they've just gotten progressively better every week as they're everyone's starting to get healthy and they got a rhythm going. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I think I don't see them slowing down for the better half of or the next decade. They're just so young and have so many good playmakers.
I'm on that bandwagon now too.
Yeah.
Joe, what are your thoughts on the Packers? Because they play with the Bears, the Vikings, and the Lions. I mean, this is the best division in football. Like, how good do you think the Packers stack against all those other teams, like, futuristically?
I mean, I think they're pretty darn good. They're just a solid team. I'm just happy to see, someone that's come in a little time behind a high caliber, very good quality quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, got a time to develop, and then, basically got to get the opportunity now to take it over, and it's his team. The biggest thing that I saw and I thought was really interesting from this last game was Josh Jacobs got his first career receiving touchdown now 6 years into into his career. So it's a really, really exciting for him, and I hope it's the first of many for all of the other fantasy owners out there. So.
That is a wild stat.
That was
a wild stat. I don't know how that was even possible, but
yeah, I genuinely don't know what the Raiders were doing his entire career. That's crazy. Especially with Derek Carr loving checking the football down as much as he does. That is even crazier to me with the Kamara 15 receptions for 8 yards stat lines that you see with the Saints. Quick shout out to my I don't know how we're doing it, but we started the season 0-2, and somehow my Colts have won 4 of the last 5. I have no idea how some of these games look so bad, but we're finding a way to win them, and I got to give the coaching staff credit because they just deal with chaos every week. 1 week it's Joe Flacco, 1 week it's AR looking extremely rusty, making bad plays. The next week we lose our defensive lineman. The next week we're out Jonathan Taylor. I mean, you're just we're just piecemealing this thing, and somehow we're winning games. I don't know how, but we're about to enter a gauntlet of a schedule for the next 4 weeks. So getting this winning record going into it prior to an easier latter half of the season was very important. So I just shout out to our coaches for somehow piecemealing this team together the last couple of weeks.
Do you ever feel like you still have a little bit of I always feel like I get a little deja vu when I see these teams and I think of who used to play for them, and I always go back to my childhood. Yeah, I'm still expecting, Dwight Freeney is going to come out and save you guys.
I know, right?
And be able to lift you back up one more time.
Man, you have no idea, bro. I miss that man. I mean, I grew up with him and Mathis across from each other. That was the era of where you were actually able to somehow have 2 elite pass rushers. You just don't see that anymore because of the way contracts are structured. So, it's important to be able to build a more deep line these years. So, but yeah, man, you just gave me such nostalgia. I miss that.
Although they could probably be using Andrew Luck right now because AR5 still hasn't impressed Evan and I. 10 for 24.
Yeah,
I mean, the only reason you guys snuck that victory out was because you guys played the Dolphins, who just hit 70 points. It took them 7 weeks to do that. Last year in a game, they scored 70 in one game. So between the Denver Broncos and the Colts, I have no idea how some of these teams are 4-3.
Hey, we won 4 of our last 5. Do not compare us to the Broncos. And we beat the Steelers, who just beat Joe's Jets, and are a 5-win team. So don't completely take credit away from the squad. Joe Flacco played well too. So
I think with Joe Flacco, you guys are a good team, but unfortunately, AR is like one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. Dude he's
as of right now, I'm not. As of right now, As of right now, I'm not even going to try to argue that with you because he truly did not look good this weekend. But this guy has the issue with him is in the games that he has looked good, like in his career, he gets hurt immediately after he has a good game, and then it's like reset and try to relearn again. I mean, you got to keep in mind, Jaden Daniels is 2.5 years older than Anthony Richardson. Like, people forget that Anthony Richardson is the youngest starting quarterback. He's younger than Caleb Williams. Like, I'm not trying to make an excuse. I'm just saying he needs to get reps. And if he keeps leaving the field, we're never going to see if he can get to a true ceiling or not, right? So
it's a good rebuttal. It's a good point.
I'm not saying he's always going to be horrible, but
also play.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, as of right now, I agree that he's really struggling. I'm not disputing.
No, I said he was also going up against Tyler Huntley and Tim Boyle, the dynamic duo. So
true.
They had a little room for a little margin.
Really funny, though? I didn't recognize this until we had the game. The Dolphins' defense has been surprisingly good this year, which I didn't realize that they had that. I went and looked after, and they've held like 4 teams to under 20 points this year, which is really surprising given the lack of offensive production they've had since Tua's been out. So it's something to keep in mind if Tua does come back this week. Like, the Dolphins can make a bit of a run there in the second half because the AFC wildcard is wide open.
What's your thought on him not wearing the Guardian cap for personal reasons?
I was listening to the fantasy footballers, and they were like, maybe he would have, but then he probably saw Devon A-Chain looking like an idiot out there with the Guardian cap every week. So then he was like, I'm not doing it. But all jokes aside, I think I respect guys like A-Chain who are comfortable doing it because they're prioritizing their health. My number one thing is, if you're a quarterback, I don't know if it's like a vision issue or if you're so used to not having it, if it's going to impact your game in any way, maybe that's what he's thinking about. More than anything, I just wish I don't know about his medical situation. I'm not going to pretend like I'm a doctor. I don't know why he's still playing, though, man. I would have taken that guaranteed contract and been like, I'm going to go, preserve, what I have left in terms of, being healthy, and because I want him to be healthy long term. But it is what it is. He's a competitor, so can't fault him for that.
Anyway, side note, I'm with the Toronto with you, so I think we got to jump to picks. But my honorable mention of teams we didn't mention, some love for the Arizona Cardinals, who are in the mix to win that division because they've already beaten San Francisco on the road. Just don't sleep on the Cardinals here, and the Bucks, just a huge blow to the Bucks, losing Mike Evans for a few weeks and Godwin for the season. Tough loss against the Ravens, who look like a juggernaut, and Lamar playing at an MVP level once again. So I wanted to tidy up on the Monday Night Football teams before we jump to picks, but let's see if you guys are good.
Let's do it. Yeah, the Godwin injury really turned their season around.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
That
was too soon.
It's going to take me a second.
That was too soon.
Relax, man.
That was too soon. Too soon. I regret that immensely.
All right, looking at last week, Zach, you were the big winner at 13-2 last week, which is just a fantastic week. You're catching Cy here. Cy was 10-5, so you pick up 3 games on him. Cy holds a 3-game lead on you for the year. It was 11-4. So I'm still 9 games off the pace of Cy. But looking at Thursday night football, Minnesota at the Rams, as I think someone mentioned earlier, Minnesota's a 3-point favorite on the road. Over-under's a 48.5. Let's start with Joe.
Yeah, so I'm going to Minnesota -3. I got to stick with my Sam Darnold take that I want to keep him on the field.
Love it. Cy?
Yeah, I'm going to go Minnesota win and cover. They looked really good last week defensively.
All right, Zach.
Minnesota win and cover, which means that Stafford does not get traded.
Yeah, Phil, I got Minnesota winning and covering that one. 1 p.m., Jets at Patriots. Jets are 7-point favorites on the road. Over-under's 40.5. I'll say the Jets win, but don't cover. They don't impress me right now, as horrible as New England is. Zach, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I think this is actually a pretty solid spread for the Jets. I think that they're going to have their liftoff game here. And they beat the Patriots handedly. Now, albeit it was at home, but I think that this is going to be like a 28-7 game, a 28-10 game. Not Brian, the Drake May hype so far. So, Sal, kick it your way. We'll let Joe answer the Jets last.
Yeah, what's the number again?
7.
I'm trying to figure that out. 7? Okay, so I'm going to go Jets win and cover, and assuming their secondary gets a little bit healthier, but I think they are going to. So, say Jets win and cover.
Yeah, so I'm going for the same thing. Jets -7. Got to go with my boys. They can beat you down, but you're always with them.
Baltimore at Cleveland's the next game. Baltimore is a 9-point favorite on the road. Over under is 34.5. And gentlemen, we get to watch Jameis Winston play football this week, which is super exciting. Let's start with Cy on this one.
I think we're going to get like a 2-touchdown, 3-interception game from Jameis Winston, and the Baltimore Ravens will cover.
All right, Joe?
So I would like I think the Baltimore Ravens are going to win this and run away with it.
All right, I have win but no cover. The Browns are going to be so much better with Jameis Winston. It's a divisional game. I think they're going to play a lot more inspired. No offense to Deshaun, but yeah. Zach?
Yeah, it's a tricky spread, possible trap game, but I'm going to go with Joe's idea here. Ravens win big and run with it. So give me Ravens big time.
Also, a big one here is what I'm seeing on ESPN is tickets for 14. So it's going to be a real one where they're going to get all the good things in the stadium.
A raucous atmosphere, I'm sure it'll be, but from one raucous atmosphere to another, the one that will actually be Tennessee at Detroit. Detroit's an 11-point favorite at home. Over under is 44.5. I got Detroit winning cover. Does anyone disagree? So we can go quickly here.
No.
Joe?
No.
All right. Indianapolis at Houston. Houston's a 5-point favorite at home. Over under is 45.5. I'm going to say the Colts get a divisional win outright here. They play Houston tough. I'm just going to say they find a way. I want another upset on the card. I don't have a ton of logic, but we'll go to Zach.
No logic whatsoever. This is one of my favorite spreads. Texans win and cover. They've been playing bad. They're not going to play anymore. They're not going to play bad anymore at home. Good game for CJ Stroud.
So I'm going to go that the Texans win, but they do not. So we're going to see a close one.
Yeah, I think the most realistic possibility across America is going to be the Texans win but don't cover, because Anthony Richardson and the Colts have played really well against CJ Stroud and that Texans team. They're 1-1, and they had a 2-point game. But I'm going to go money line just because I'm going to go with my homer pick, and I think we can.
Nice. I figured I wouldn't be seeding a game on this one, so I love it. Green Bay at Jacksonville. Green Bay is a 4-point favorite on the road. Runners 49.5. I got Green Bay crushing them. Anyone want to give a different pick?
No.
Green Bay. Green Bay wins, yeah.
All right, Arizona at Miami. Miami's a 3.5-point favorite at home. I assume they think Tua is coming back, and that's not for sure. Over under is 46.5. Let's say Tua is the starting quarterback for the Dolphins. If that is the case, Zach, what do you got?
Please still give me the Cardinals.
All right.
Cardinals.
All right,
I think we should reserve the right to be able to change our pick on this based on if we know Tua's playing or not. But for right now, if Tua's playing, I'm picking the Dolphins.
All right, Joe?
I think Dolphins.
I like the Dolphins to win as well. I think he's just too good with him in the mix.
3.5 points. Are you guys laying that?
Honestly, if Tua's healthy,
All right.
yes, I am.
I have Arizona money line as well, even if Tua plays again. Arizona sneaky, tough coming off a Monday night game though, and a 1 p.m. game across the country though, so it's a tough spot. But I'll say Tua is a little rusty. Atlanta at Tampa Bay, just like we saw a few weeks ago, huge game in the division here. Tampa Bay really needs this one at home. Atlanta's a 2.5-point favorite on the road though. Over under is 46.5. Let's start with Cy.
Atlanta, I would tease the spread up. I think Atlanta's going to win by over a touchdown because the injuries Buccaneers have. They ripped that secondary last time they played.
I like Atlanta and covering as well. Not as bold as Cy to go that far, but
yeah. So I thought when these two teams played 3 weeks ago, Tampa Bay was the better team, and their secondary was super beat up. I thought when they got this opportunity to play at home, they would win, but now their 2 top receivers are out. But I'm going to pick Tampa Bay on the money line anyway. I'm going to say Baker, the gunslinger, finds a way to get a huge divisional win and still give them hope in the division. The Bucs are one of my teams. I'm heartbroken about these wide receiver injuries, but I think they can find
Zach, he's going to be throwing to you this weekend, man. You're going to be his number one
taking
receiver.
advantage of a Falcons not playing super hot over the last couple of weeks. They just tuned the engine, and they're going to be out ready to rock and roll. I think this is going to be a multiple touchdown game, actually. Give me Atlanta.
Next game, Philadelphia at Cincinnati. A really interesting game here between a couple of teams that kind of tough to figure out so far this year. Cincinnati's actually a 2.5-point favorite at home. Over under is 47.5. I have that spread spot on, so I'm going to say Cincinnati to win and cover. I think these teams are pretty equal, but I'm going to say Joe Burrow gets it done. Zach?
Yep, give me the same thing. Cincinnati wins and covers. The X factor here is Darius Slay cannot cover anybody. It's gonna be a bloodbath.
Five.
Look at Evan coming back around on the Cincy train after ripping him 2 weeks ago. Cincy won.
Well, I hate one of these teams, so I had to pick one. Joe.
I'm going to go for Philadelphia on this one to cover.
Sounds good. Moving quickly here, Buffalo at Seattle. Buffalo's a 3-point favorite on the event. Over under is 46.5. Si? All right, Joe.
I like Buffalo, and I want that over as well. I think it's
all right. I got Buffalo as well. Zach?
Give me Seattle.
Wow. Okay. Saints at Chargers. Chargers are 7-point favorites at home. Over under is 40.5. I have Chargers winning cover. Zach?
I hate this spread so much. Give me Saints cover plus 7.
Side?
I'm going to go Chargers. I don't know if Chris Olave is playing, so Chargers win and cover.
Joe?
I think Chargers win, but I don't think they cover.
All right. Chicago at Washington. I'm going to assume that Marcus Mariota is the quarterback for this one. Chicago is 2.5-point favorites on the road, so I assume that Vegas agrees. Over under is 43.5. Let's start with Si.
If Mariota is playing, this is my favorite spread of the week. Bears all the way.
Joe?
Oof. I want to disagree a little bit, and I want to go for Washington here, covering the spread.
Zach?
Give me Chicago to win and cover that spread, and I do change my pick to the Chargers as well,
all right.
actually.
Yeah, I'm going to take Washington either way. I think they're a better team. The Bears have not played well on the road this year. I think Marcus Mariota looks pretty seamless in the offense, so I think it'll at least be a good game. But I'll take my sweat, obviously. Panthers at Broncos. Bryce Young is starting at quarterback because Andy Dalton got sprained a thumb or whatever in a car accident. Luckily, he's fine. Yeah. Denver's a 10-point favorite at home. I have no cover, but whatever. I don't know what you guys want to jump in with. No cover.
I've got an alibi, so it wasn't me that did it. I just don't see. I mean, this one's just like a throwaway, just because you can't even choose either one. Carolina to cover.
Yeah, I'm just glad him and his family are okay. I'm going to say Carolina to cover.
Kansas City at Vegas. Kansas City's a 10-point favorite on the road. I just 41.5 over on there. I'm going to say no cover. It just feels high for a divisional game, but Vegas is so bad, so I don't know. What do you guys got quickly?
Chiefs.
I got this one. Kansas City's defense is going to cover this one by themselves. Kansas City.
I'll go Vegas.
Dallas at San Francisco. Sunday Night Football. San Francisco's a 4.5-point favorite. Looks like Debo's out of the hospital and might have a shot to play, but obviously now Ayuk is out, so tons of moving parts there. I'll say San Francisco wins and covers, though, coming off a bad loss. Zach?
Give me Dallas. Dallas money line.
Si?
San Francisco win, and I'll go cover. Not
Joe?
Either way.
I like the Dallas money line. Too many unknowns on the San Francisco side.
All right, Monday Night Football, Giants at Steelers. Steelers are 6.5-point favorites at home. Russell Wilson, I hate to say it, but he looks pretty good in that Jets game. Over-under was a low 36.5. I'll take Pittsburgh to win and cover. Does anyone have a opposing pick there?
All aboard the George Pickens train. Pittsburgh.
Love the over in this game.
All right.
Pittsburgh win and cover. He's got the moon ball back.
Can I just say one last thing? Can we stop giving the same damn teams primetime games? I'm so tired of that. No offense, Joe, but my Colts get one primetime game this whole year, and guess who it's against? Your Jets in 2 weeks, who have just played back-to-back primetime games. I'm so tired of this nonsense. Like, I got to watch Pittsburgh again Sunday Night Football, and the damn Giants and Cowboys. It's like, give me something different, man. I had to watch the Chiefs 49ers at 4 o'clock. I'm tired of this BS, man. You can click.
It's saving me from buying.
Tag the NFL.
It's saving me from buying Sunday ticket. That's all it is.
Yeah, you're
my guys are on TV every week.
That's beautiful. Anything else, gents? That's all I got.
That's it.
No.
All right,
Thanks, Joe, for coming on. That was Mondays Down South.
Mondays Down South.
Appreciate